Hey, Nikki Brown here. No matter where you are, no matter what part of the world you're in, I hope that you're having a good day. I want to talk about the dark night of the soul. According to AI, the phrase dark night of the soul refers to a period of intense spiritual crisis and transformation, often marked by feelings of meaninglessness, disconnection, and despair. It's a process of spiritual purification and awakening, though it can be a painful and challenging experience. The term was popularized by St. John of the Cross, a 16th century Carmelite monk who used it to describe the hardships and pain one encounters on the path to God. So basically, you're broken down and broken open, right? Um, any traumatic experiences that you may have experienced over your lifetime, um, some of those things or all of those things may start to surface. And a lot of people don't feel uncomfortable with that. So they drink, they smoke, and they abuse themselves in ways that prevent them from feeling those feelings because most people don't want to feel uncomfortable. Also, when you go through a dark night of the soul, people will think that you're weird and crazy. And so you'll begin to disconnect yourself from most people because most people are not going to understand. You will attract like minded people, but people are on different levels. So no one's ever really going to be on, I should say, no one. You'll very rarely meet people who are really on your level. You will meet people who pretend to be on your level. They will pretend that they are going through the same thing you're going through when in fact they are not. They're just doing it to potentially get close to you. But it isn't easy, it can be very uncomfortable. But the best thing is to write these thoughts down, right? To allow yourself to cry, to allow yourself to scream if you need to. If you need to go to, I often recommend go to the mountains, go to the park, go somewhere where you can have some privacy and just really let it out. If you have to go inside of a closet, right, into the bathroom, because I know that some people don't get to have privacy. Um, if you have to go to a church and have other people in on it, right? Um, so that they're protecting and cover you. Like if you have an abusive spouse that won't let you out of their eyesight, you'll have to find a creative way to, you know, allow your feelings to be released. Or you may have to find a creative way to leave this person. And I don't typically advise people to leave someone, but at the same time, if this is someone who's very abusive, I don't recommend staying. And I know a lot of people think that it's very honorable to stay, even if you're being abused, because you know, you have these vows and it says for better or for worse. But the Bible definitely says that abuse is one of those exceptions. And I'm not sure why people pick and choose only certain things from the Bible, but it's not, you're not dishonoring yourself, you're not shaming yourself, you're not shaming your family, you're not a failure because your marriage didn't work out. You shouldn't feel guilty or any of those things. You should protect yourself because you're not being protected by your spouse. You're being abused by your spouse, right? And this will be a part of your dark night of the soul. Don't ever feel like you can't get help or you won't have resources. There's so many resources for battered women. And you may not want to stay in a shelter, right? You may want to still have this connection with your certain relatives. But once you get away from this person and you gain your power back and your strength back, you can be around those certain relatives or friends and it be okay. And some of them may be mad at you. But again, for your own peace, sometimes you have to walk away. And again, that's part of the dark night of the soul, right? Making better choices and decisions for yourself, and then in turn, helping other people once you're healed, once you've gotten to a better place, or even while you're going through the process. You can teach people about the steps that you've taken. Um, I can share some of the steps that I've taken. Um, in 2013, so if I'm not mistaken, March of 2013, um, I moved back to Raleigh, North Carolina from New Jersey in January 2013, right? So around that same time, Deepak Chopra and Oprah started their meditation series, right? And it was 28-day meditation. And during that time frame, my father passed away, and I was completely broken open. I cried every day for about 3 months straight, like balled up in a curled up in a ball. Um, and there were a few different things going on. It was the reality that, you know, he wasn't really there for me as a child, but as an adult, he apologized for not being there, and he attempted to, you know, have a relationship with me. Um, he was using drugs, and he was clean for a long time, but then I believe he slipped back into it. So I didn't hear from him as much as I did when he was going through his sober period. But I did appreciate the apology. You know, he explained his side of the story, some of the things that went on when I was a child, and you know, he did his best to actually show up and really be fully present. Um, the other thing was, I realized I had a fear of abandonment and a fear of rejection. Because I was talking to this guy at the time, and, you know, he was out there, and I found myself like reverting back to when I was in a relationship and things didn't go the way I wanted to, and I was writing these long text messages and emails and all the things, and it was like, wait a minute, you're feeling rejected, you're feeling abandoned. It's not even about this person. And I realize it's because of uh, the disconnect in relationship I had with my dad. And so again, that was like a dark night of the soul for me because again, I was curled in a ball for 3 months, just crying every day because that was really hard for me. Again, knowing that I would never have this relationship with him, because now he's transitioned, um, and was no longer in my life. And a lot of men in my family, either they were in jail or they were deceased. Um, and so I didn't get to have a lot of male role models. Like I did have some, um, but a lot of them, like my great grandfather died when I was 5. Um, my grandfather died when I was older, but he moved away when I was very young because my grandparents divorced when I was 3, and he moved to Delaware, and we were in New Jersey, and so I didn't get to see him as often. Um, you know, when he lived in New Jersey, he moved into the YMCA because we all lived in a house together. So once we all separated, he moved into the YMCA. He had a bike. He would ride his bike to to the house all the time. But again, once he moved to Delaware, all of that changed. So um, that connection was lost. So because I didn't really have a lot of male role models around me, um, I fell into relationships that did not serve a good purpose in my life, right? Um, and I made the wrong choices when it came to relationships. And so during that period, a lot of that was cleansed. And I decided um, not to allow someone in my life unless they were on a similar path, right? So around that time, which was, so that was 2013. So about 2 years later, 2015, um, is when a lot of people start to become awake, right? All this information started to come out, and it was like, good, I'll have people I can talk to, um, because a lot of the knowledge that people were newly gaining, some of it I've known since 1994, and some of it I also learned along the way, and I'm still learning because we never stop learning, right? So here we go, like 2014, 2015, and so I'm meeting better people, right? I'm meeting more conscious people who are on the same page, um, or at least I think, right? Because again, everybody's on different levels, and some people are very deceptive with where they are. And so I start dating this guy, and he's allegedly conscious, but he's also manipulative, and he's not willing to do anything for a sister unless she's sleeping with him. So because I did not want to have that, because he was polygamous. I did not want to have a polygamous relationship. I did talk to him for a while once after he told me, and I wanted to see whether or not it was something that I would be able to do. But I think I was more curious than anything. Um, but even talking to her, she didn't want to be my sister. It was like an interview. She wanted help for the kids and around the house. And and for me, that's not what it was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about, if you're really supposed to have this sisterhood, it's supposed to be a connection. And then he made a comment like he had a, sister, he had another sister, and they all lived together, and that the women would be jealous of each other, and they would be in competition with cooking. And he thought it was the most hilarious thing, and I didn't think that that was funny at all. But again, he was very manipulative. And in my mind, it's like, how is it that you're saying that you're conscious when you're still doing some very unrighteous things? This is not how you're supposed to behave. And so I distanced myself from that person. So then it became like, okay, not only do I need to find people who are more like minded, who are also righteous. So here I go again, thinking that I met this person, right? And come to find out he was pretending as well, right? A lot of people are not really who they say they are. They will just pretend to be someone just to get you to do what they want you to do. And their intentions are not pure. And so that's no different than someone who's not conscious, right? Someone who's not spiritually awake and aware. If you're doing deceptive and manipulative things, you're no better than anyone else. So why are you calling yourself conscious? You just, no, you're still unrighteous. So I realized, okay, you have to pay attention to people's intentions. And you actually have to take your time and get to know people. And a lot of people will accuse you of being manipulative if you want to take your time and get to know them, because a lot of people feel like, oh, well, if you already had sex with somebody, especially if you have a baby, why should they have to wait when you didn't make somebody else wait? Now, they don't know that. They don't know how long somebody else may have waited. You could be divorced. You could have been in a long term relationship with this person and it just didn't work out. They don't know those things. They're just they're just trying to manipulate you to get you to do what they want you to do. That's the bottom line. And so these are things that you tend to deal with. And again, these are the things that will make you become alone or a loner. But you have to get comfortable with being alone because, again, everybody's not going to be on the same page. Now, you can't completely distance yourself, especially if you're working and still, have to be a part of the world, so to speak, right? Um, but you have to use your discernment and you kind of have to have surface level relationships with people. You can't get too deep with the average person because, again, they're not on the same page. So once you've been broken down and broken open, you start to see things completely differently. You start to notice things that you didn't notice. So as soon as someone says something to you that is of an unrighteous nature, you will notice it right away. You will notice how they're making you feel, like, because people will start to belittle you or talk down to you and think that they're better than you because they see your light. They see your aura. They see that you want to do things the right way, so they think it's you're stupid or naive and gullible and that they can take advantage of you. Whereas you can see straight through them. And then some people realize you can see straight through them, especially if you call them out on certain things. So now they're afraid and they don't know what to do. But again, writing things down, writing down how you feel, writing down how you think. And this could be an ongoing thing because, again, once you go through your a dark night of the soul, and you release all those feelings and you actually acknowledge how you feel, what you're feeling, why you're feeling that way, when you started to feel that way, and who was the person or people who actually started making you feel that way, right? Because usually you have a top five. We'll call them top five. And it's usually mother, father, potentially siblings or cousins, right? Maybe even aunts, uncles, maybe somebody you've been in a relationship with, maybe it's somebody you went to school with, right? But usually you have a top five. And so when you come in contact with this person who makes you feel the same way as someone in your top five, you start to acknowledge it's not that person. This is something that happened to you long time ago, and this person that's in front of you right now is just a trigger or a test. Sometimes people are a test to see whether or not you've actually healed and whether or not you'll actually snap, right? Or put them in their place or tell them, all these different things. But if you can look at it and acknowledge, like, that person was like my mom. That person was like my dad. That person was like my aunt. That person was like my cousin. And they dishonored me. They abandoned me. They rejected me. Or they hurt me in some way. But then you also acknowledge that everything is an experience. You're meant to experience these things so that you can help other people. You're not meant to hold on to and have a woe is me moment and become an alcoholic or a weed head or a nicotine head or whatever. You're not meant to abuse yourself because someone else potentially abused you in some way. And now you're putting it onto yourself. And like, oh, this is what I'm used to. I'm used to toxicity. I'm used to abuse, so I'm just going to abuse myself by doing things that don't serve a good purpose in my life. That's not what you're meant to do. And so people find themselves doing these things that don't serve a good purpose. And so, again, once you acknowledge that, and you work your way to stop doing those things, it's hurt, it's painful, it's tough, right? But it's necessary if you want to be better, if you want to do better, if you want to make better choices and decisions. Will you be perfect? It's not even about being perfect, but you will elevate to a higher level of consciousness once you do these things. And some people kind of go through the motions, like they'll journal, they'll write down their feelings, they'll say affirmations. Um, they might try to eat better, but they're not really there at all. They're still very low vibrational. They're just kind of going through the motions and kind of in their mind, they're not pretending, but they're really pretending because you can tell there's no changed behavior. They're still manipulative. They're still dishonoring themselves and others, trying to get over. Some people will still kill and destroy just to get what they want. So again, when they're around you and they know that you're, vibrating on a certain level, they'll pretend that they're on that same level when they're really not. But again, once you actually go through the dark night of the soul and become a better person, you will see those things. You will be able to tell the difference between the truth and deception. And again, it's not easy. And sometimes it takes years. It really depends on what you've actually been through. For some people, maybe it was just financial. But for some people, they really went through some verbal, mental, emotional, financial, and physical abuse, whether it was at home with their parents or at home with their spouse that they've stayed with for 25, 30 years, who would just abuse them, and they're just waiting for this person to no longer exist. So again, some people become minimalists during this time. Um, like Thoreau, there was a poet named Thoreau. He went to live in the woods, in a shack in the woods, and all he did was basically write and connect with nature. So, walking barefoot, wearing your gemstones, burning sage, by burning Palo Santo, doing Reiki healing. Um, and some people think that Reiki is demonic because they don't understand it. But it's no different than if you go to church and the pastor said, put hands on you, you know, and you have a Holy Ghost moment. It's a very similar concept. So if you're okay with that, then you should be fine with Reiki. But again, people don't take the time to understand it, and their pastor probably told them that it was demonic, so they listen to that. But you know, pastors are conditioned to do what they're told to do by the government, and people don't realize that. If you research the history, there was always an overseer in the church, and the overseer would tell the pastor what they could and could not say. That's how come every Sunday your pastor pretty much talks about the same exact thing. And they don't go through every scripture in the Bible. And this is not to down any churches or take anything away from any churches. This is not what that's about. But it's just pointing out the truth that they're not allowed to talk about any and everything in the Bible. They have to follow a certain rule in order to continue to be classified as a church who doesn't pay taxes. And again, this can be researched. So this is not something that I'm making up. And a lot of people take things personally when you tell the truth, but If it bothers you, that may be part of your dark night of the soul, to hear the truth, to know and understand the truth, the real truth and nothing but the truth. And that's one of the things that's hard for people, to accept the truth of what is really going on in this world, in their minds, and in their lifetimes. Because it's not about what somebody did to you, everything is an experience. And we're supposed to learn from those experiences and not allow them to break us down. But if we do, because we didn't know, we have to work on healing. And again, that's not easy, because most people don't want to change. And then if somebody says something to you about changing, the people just go back to the way that they were, or just to be accepted, by relatives and friends. They'll just, stay the way that they are, just to fit in and not try to be different and stand out. And so this prevents a lot of people from moving forward and doing the right thing for themselves, because they're thinking about disappointing someone else, or they're being guilted or shamed by someone else. I hope that this was helpful. As always, I love y'all. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.